Good morning. Once again, it's good to see everyone here today. To our regular members, hopefully you've had a good week. It's always good to see everyone. As we just read, or rather as we just sang, as Brent listened to that last song, we are a family. It's a special family that no other blood can ever emulate. And it's always great to be with brothers and sisters in Christ as we worship once again. We have any visitors here this morning. I want you to know as well, you are our honored guests. And you are part of our family this morning. We thank you for being with us today. It was a beautiful morning when we got here, and the storms have come to wet the ground around us, and as it's done a lot for this summer. Lord willing, here in about 4 or 5 weeks, I'm going to be bringing in new students in my classroom, and I'm going to have this slide on the very first day. And for the last several years, I have shown this to my students because as the last 15 years or so has progressed, and as I've begun my teaching career, the use of cell phones and technology have become a pretty controversial topic and thing. And I put this up here for a little bit of humor, but also as a warning as to what technology can do. And I follow that up with this right here, this picture right here. How many times have you been to a restaurant or out to a place and everyone at the table is doing this right here? Can't tell you how many times Heather and I have been either out on a date or just out as general. And we've seen couples on dates. You can tell that they're not, hadn't been married for 20 years. They're young, they're clearly on a date, and yet they're doing this right here. Technology can be a great thing. Technology can be a great tool. I'm using technology this morning. I'm using my iPad to help me keep along with my slides. I'm using the clicker here to help present my lesson. Lord willing, this evening I'll be using my phone as a tuner as I lead my song. Technology can be a great tool and a great thing in our lives. But technology can also bring a lot of bad things to our lives as well. Thought about this lesson last week as there are a couple of things that kind of took place. The Alabama State Legislature a couple of months ago passed a law that starting with this school year, phones are prohibited from the classroom. This has always been a classroom teacher and a school and district policy regardless of what they want to do. Now it's a state law. This is a very controversial topic as we're facing today. This morning, we're going to talk about technology as it relates to us as Christians. And I titled this lesson, The Digital Christian, and we're going to ask the question this morning, does technology help or hurt our spiritual lives? What we're going to do this morning is that we're going to look at 4 different aspects of technology and whether we use that technology for what we can and what we need to as Christians, or whether that technology actually pulls us away from God. And that's part of my question this morning is, does this technology help us or does it hurt us in our spiritual lives? Do we use it as a tool for our advantage or does it actually bring us away from God? And I think that you can already tell kind of where we're going to go with this and already the dangers that come along with it. As is, the state legislature has deemed, technology has become such a problem in the classroom that cell phones just need to be put away. It's too much of a distraction. And whether there are parts of that I can agree with and parts of that I don't agree with, technology can bring a lot of bad things to our lives. So we're going to look at several aspects this morning as to how we use technology as Christians and why this is important. And with each one we're going to look at 4 topics, and we're going to look at the positives and the negatives of each one. And we're going to start off with television. This goes along with television, movies. I'll even include radio and music along with this. And there are some positives to television. The television was invented back in the 1940s and 1950s. And imagine for the first time being able to see a moving picture in your home. That leads to color television and what we have today. Where we have TVs, even on our cell phones. There's a lot of great things that go along with that. You're looking at wholesome shows and movies. You're looking at things that we can watch to help to bring us joy and laughter, things that we can relate to. I think that one of the best shows of all time, and I say this because even today's generation, students coming up, they watch this show and they like this show. And that's the Andy Griffith Show. And I've done several lessons based off that show because of the good morals that go along with it. And even today, 60 plus years later, it's still relatable. You've got shows that teach lessons with good morals. That's also entertaining. There's nothing really, or there's not hardly anything in there that is unwholesome. You've got things here that we can learn from and things you can watch, stuff to bring you up and to uplift you. You have intellectual content. We've gotten this summer. Heather and I have gotten. We're trying to watch a little bit more movies since we have more time, and we've watched several documentaries and things that go along with documentaries and in history and things I'm watching for school to help to improve my knowledge. But there are a lot of things that we can learn from television shows and documentaries and movies and things like that. And you can even have biblical content along with that. There are shows and movies that have been produced that's based off of the Bible. Now, granted, I'm going to say this, and that sometimes those are not necessarily accurate, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But you're looking at having the Bible that's presented in several ways in regards to shows, movies, even when it comes to the radio. You now have audio books, and that includes the Bible as well. Remember, I guess it's about 15 years or so ago, Heather and I, from a mother-in-law, we got her the Bible on disc. And what it was is it was James Earl Jones reading the Bible. And it was a way for her to where, as she was driving, and she drove a lot at that point in time, she could listen to the Bible while she was driving. Technology can bring us a lot of great things. Television, these things can bring us a lot of great things, but of course there are negatives along with that. You have language, and language just about everywhere you turn. You have inappropriate words and things that's being said. You have things such as sex and violence and drugs. There are a lot of things that in these shows and movies that can be very negative. I told this story before, but we were at a movie store many years ago, and I ran into somebody that I knew that was a member of the church, and they suggested a movie. And he said, man, it's got everything in it. You got to watch it. And sure enough, it had everything in it. It had language, it has violence, it had drugs, it had everything in it. Movies can also be a negative in regards to the kind of content. You can be looking at disinformation. One of the things that Heather and I have watched and kind of got into the last few weeks are the Kennedys. One of the last things that I taught in this past semester, and there are a couple of series based off the family, and we watched a couple of those over the last few weeks, and as we watched those, I had to go back and double check and say, okay, what's accurate, what's not accurate, what is made for Hollywood, as historical movies often do. And you're also looking at biblically incorrect information. There are some movies and TV shows based off the Bible, but some of those are not always correct. Several years ago, probably 10 years or so ago, there was a movie that came out, I think it was, or a mini-series, I think it was simply called The Bible. And it was based around the life of Jesus. And Heather and I watched it, and it was very, it had a very good visual representation of what some of these events look like. But after each episode, we had to go back and research and read the Bible and make sure that what was on TV was not some kind of Hollywood production, and that it followed the Bible. And there were some things in there that were not quite accurate. So just because we watch it or hear it doesn't mean that it's always true. And that's where my biggest downfall is, that if I see something, it sticks with me. So there are some positives and negatives to the kind of shows that are out there, to the kind of movies that are out there, the kind of music that's out there. My question for us is, what do we watch? What do we listen to? What kind of shows? What kind of movies? Are they movies and shows to where they're good and wholesome and nothing wrong with it, or are they things that really bring a defile to God? We look at Psalm 101, verse 3, where David says, I will set no worthless thing before my eyes. I hate the work of those who fall away. It shall not cling to me. A perverse heart shall leave me, and I will know no evil. My eyes shall be upon the faithful of the land, and they may dwell with me. One who walks in a blameless way is one who will serve me. Now, David was no stranger to bad choices. As we look at his decision with Bathsheba, David's lust, David's temptation, what David's eyes saw led him to a whole series of sin, led to the death of an innocent man. And so as I went back and I read this psalm from David, it means even more to me because David messed up. He knew, he learned from it. We got to make sure that what our eyes are seeing is something that's not a defile to God, but rather something that honors Him. We got to make sure that what we're watching, what we're putting into our minds, what we're putting into our hearts, is something that helps to bring us up and to uplift us, and not something that's taking us away from God. I think it's important what we watch and what we listen to. I think it's important that we make sure that we monitor those things. Because the more that stuff enters our mind and our hearts, the more that it tempts us to not only say those things, but it also makes it more normal for us to where it just doesn't impact us. We have to be careful about what we watch. The next thing on the list is cell phones. And again, cell phones are pretty controversial in regards to this topic. Cell phones, they were first invented 30, 40 years ago. You had car phones, and then you had the first cellular phones. The first cell phone that I ever used was when I was in high school. A girl that I was dating had one of those big phones, and whenever we went out, she took it with her. The first cell phone that I ever got was a little bitty thing back in 2001, and we've progressed a long way since then. There are a lot of positives to cell phones. You have direct communication. I can't tell you how many times Heather and I talk about, can you go back and imagine a world with those cell phones where something happens, you don't call or text, or if you're worried about somebody, not sure where they are, I'll call them to see where they are. They can be a direct communication for whenever something comes up in emergency. You're looking at tools for life. Within my cell phone, I have things such as calculators, I have translators. I've got things that help me with my everyday life that help me to not only progress as a person, but also help me in regards to teaching and other things. You have safety tools. We have tools in our cell phones that can help for safety. You have tracking devices to where if somebody gets lost or kidnapped or something like that, you can track it down by using your phone. And of course, biblical apps as well. On my phone, I've got 2 or 3 different Bible apps. I've got the Bible in 2 different areas. At one point in time, I even had like a little Bible quiz to help me in regards to just different topics of the Bible. There are many positives that cell phones can bring. Again, things that they're supposed to be used for, but of course, there's a lot of negatives that come with that. And I simply put down here just too much time wasted. There are several things I can put down here for cell phones, but it comes down to just spending too much time on this thing and not enough time on the things that we should be focusing on. I'll go back to that second picture that I showed of the people at the table to where all they were doing is this right here. They're not talking, they're not conversing, they're not enjoying each other. And I'm sure that's probably a posed picture. But how many times do we see that in our society? How many times do I see that within my students if I don't stop? Again, you've got some great tools here, but it leads to a lot of wasted time. So my question here is, do we use our phone as a tool, or are we too reliant on it? And what I mean by that is it our go-to whenever I'm bored, or whenever I don't want to be somewhere, or just whatever? Are we too reliant on it? I'll say this is kind of funny because as a teacher, I've always been hardcore against cell phones. In that when I'm teaching, it's put up. If I see it, if I hear it, I'm taking it up. How many professional developments I've been to where teachers, what are they doing with somebody speaking? They're on the cell phone. We went to Limestone County Institutes a couple of times, so where everybody in the district's there, you got a big speaker and probably about a couple of dozen people just constantly on this thing right here. Again, there's some great things that go along with this, and of course, I'm not immune for this myself, to where I've been a victim of this. Rather, I've done this way too much to where I've used it more as reliance and not enough as a tool. As a Christian, we got to make sure that we are careful in regards to how much time we spend doing things that don't really matter. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6 says, "Go to the ant, you lazy one. Observe its ways and be wise, which having no chief officer or ruler prepares its food in the summer and gathers its provision in the harvest. How long will you lie down, you lazy one, when you arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. Then your poverty will come in like a drifter, and your need like an armed man." In Greek mythology, there is a book of stories called Aesop's Fables. And I'm sure that's probably taken from this passage right here, but it talks about the story of the ant and the grasshopper. This ant is doing nothing but working all summer long, is gathering food, not having any fun. And then you got this grasshopper who's sitting around playing and singing music, and he's putting off doing any kind of work, and he's making fun of the ant. And then all of a sudden, winter comes. And guess who has food? And guess who does not have food? The grasshopper goes to the ant begging for food, saying, "I'm hungry and I'm cold, and you got to help me out." That's what this passage pretty much refers back to. Looking at a preparation, what this means here in this passage, in regards to this slide here, is that we've got to make sure that we're preparing for the right things. Are we spending too much time on things that don't really matter? And are we spending enough time investing in what we're going to face after this life, and that is the judgment? Again, when it comes to cell phones, it comes down to the fact that just too much time is wasted on those little things. Are we spending the right amount of time that we need to on God? Or are we using things like this to distract us away from this? When I first came up with this lesson last weekend, it was really about the distractions of life. I was going to make a lesson about the distractions of life, and I thought first and foremost about cell phones and social media and a couple other things. And the more I got to thinking about it, man, there's so many distractions just with technology itself. And we can talk all day long about this one right here. It comes down to how much time are we wasting? How much time am I wasting in regards to the things that, again, can be used for good, but oftentimes are not. And to go along with this, we look at our next topic, and that is the internet. The internet, which was first established about 30 years or so ago, again, has a lot of negatives. It can be a valuable tool for research. I use the internet a lot, constantly, especially when I'm teaching. Can't tell you how many days where I've been up teaching something and something hits my mind. Whether it's a question within the lesson, or maybe something to go along with it, or maybe it's just a question that a student asked me that I don't know. And what do? I go to my computer, I type it in. Quick Google search, make sure that my resource is accurate, and there's my answer. It can be a great resource for research and for looking up things. You have instant access to information. Again, remember growing up to where you had to go look through encyclopedias and books and different things. And sometimes that takes a while to read through a chapter or a passage or whatever it is, to whereas all I got to do is type it in. As long as my resource is accurate and legitimate, then there's my answer. And again, biblical resources, biblical sources. You have online Bibles, you have commentaries. You got a lot of things that goes along with the Bible. And I'll say this first and foremost, I use the internet a lot when coming up with my lessons. Whether it's researching certain passages, when I have my passages on the board, I use Bibles that are online. Of course, I make sure that they are accurate. But I use the internet a lot when it comes to my studies, my lessons here for my Wednesday night Bible study. We've been studying about angels and spiritual beings, and I spend a whole lot of time doing a lot of research and a lot of cross-referencing and making sure that what I'm teaching is accurate. And sometimes I miss on that. But the internet can be a great thing for these tools. But of course, the internet has a lot of negatives as well. You're looking at inaccurate sources. I'll tell my students at the beginning of the year, don't tell I tell you this, Wikipedia is not that bad of a source. It all depends on what it is. And you have to make sure that you are paying attention to what the actual topic is. I use Wikipedia a lot, but does that mean that it's the most accurate? Sometimes it's not. Again, it can be a great tool, but sometimes you have inaccurate sources. I want to say it's about a year or so ago where someone got a hold, I can't remember if I was at Athens or Clemens, but somebody got a hold of the Wikipedia school site and to start typing in a bunch of nonsense. And of course, it was fixed within about 30 minutes to an hour, but if you look within that time frame, you're looking at a lot of inaccurate material. There are a lot of inaccurate sources and inappropriate content. Again, you're looking at time wasted on things that are not really that important, but also looking at a lot of content that, again, brings us away from God. You're looking at content that defiles the body, defiles the soul. The other night, last night before we went to bed, watched an episode of a criminal show that we got to were watching, and it was based around a guy who killed his wife, and it came down to his use of the internet and the things that he was doing on the internet, this alternate life that he was living, emails and other things. Again, there's some great tools here, but there are also a lot of negatives as well. So does our use of the internet bring us closer or further away from God? We use it probably every single day, but what do we use it for? Do we waste our time by looking at things that, again, don't matter, or do we look at the things that are inappropriate? Do those things take us away from God? I'll look at 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 14, where Paul says, "Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry." Paul is telling them there, flee from the things of the world, flee from the things that take you away from God. And then it continues in verse 21, says, "You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the table of the Lord and the table of demons. Or do we provoke the Lord to jealousy? We are not stronger than he, are we? All things are permitted, but not all things are a benefit. All things are permitted, but not all things build people up." And this is kind of the point of what we're looking at this morning. Not everything is meant to build us up. Not everything is for benefit. And when we're using these things for things other than benefit, for things other than to build us up, then we have to question, is it bringing us away from God? Is it bringing me away from God? I'm around technology all day, every day. Again, it makes my job, my life a whole lot easier, but are there times where I spend too much time worrying about things that don't matter? And is that taking me away from God? And it can happen so easy. Within my eyesight right now, I've got 3 devices within about 15 feet from me. It's very easy for those to bring me away from God. The access is there. Again, I use it for great things. I've got my laptop here recording my lesson to go back and look at it, to hopefully share with others. I've got my tablet here to help me with my lesson. But how many times do I use these things in a way that takes me away from God? Whether it's wasting too much time playing games or other things, or looking at maybe even the news that's just so negative to where it brings me down. Helps me to lose focus of what's really important. And that brings me to a last thing this morning. And that is social media. And this is the thing that really prompted the whole lesson to begin with, is social media. Social media has a lot of positives. You have a reconnection of old friends, a connection to family. I remember when I got my first social media site, it was, I'm going blank what it's called now. Wasn't Facebook. MySpace, that's what it was, MySpace. And then Facebook. And we got so many out there now. You got Twitter or X, you got all these different things. And again, there are a lot of positives. For many years, I was off of Facebook because I just didn't want to be a part of it. And then about 5 years or so ago, when I got hired on here, I got back on it to help me with my job here, to help to spread the gospel, to help to post lessons. My best friend growing up, his mother had died. I had no idea until the day of the funeral, so it helped me to reconnect with a lot of people that I knew. It helps to lead to connection. I have family who lives out of state. It helped me to connect with them. Looking at current events. There are some times where I learn about events more from social media than I did from the news. Sometimes local news stations didn't do a very good job of reporting news, whereas I go to the internet and I know exactly what's happening when it's happening. And of course, to spread the gospel. I try to use my Facebook page to spread the gospel as much as possible for my lessons. We try to use the church page to help bring others in. There are a lot of positives to social media, but of course there are a lot of negatives as well. What we call keyboard warriors. They were just looking to be online to cause trouble, to start fights. There's so many negativity, so many negative things that are on social media. Sometimes all people want to do is cause trouble and post nothing but negativity. That starts fights and disagreements. Sometimes it leads to inappropriate relationships. I saw a lot of this when I was on social media. And it got to a point where even before I was hacked and lost all access, I thought, is this really worth it? Am I wasting too much time on this? Is it too much negative? Is it really worth it to be a part of this? I'll tell you, since January, since my page has been hacked, it's taken a lot of stress out of my life. Other than the fact that somebody's trying to use my aunts as bait to get money. But I told Heather just a couple weeks ago, you know what? I didn't really realize until about the second week of June that it was Pride Month. Pride Month. If I was on social media, I would go to June 1st. It took me a couple of weeks because social media crams that stuff down your throat. And that's kind of the whole point of all this, is that these distractions help to bring us away from God. These distractions, while they can be used as good tools and while they can be used for positive things, how much are they taking us away from God? How much temptation is there to do things that we don't need to be doing? Even if something is innocent as maybe getting into a debate or arguing. And I got into several debates over things like biblical matters, things I thought were important. I had friends that I cared about who were trying to bring them to God. And again, it led to a lot of great things. I had a friend that I graduated high school with where we reconnected 2 years ago. And we worked for a long time to try to bring him to God. Unfortunately, I couldn't do that. But again, it led to a lot of great things, but a lot of bad things as well. And in the last 5 months, I realized just how much this was bringing me away from God. And that's just me. Everybody's different. People ask me to get back on Facebook, not in your life. First of all, I don't want it to happen again and mess up with innocent people. But also, I don't want it to take time away from my life or what's really important. So again, I ask the question, do we use social media for good or to contribute to the negative? And I've been guilty of both of these. I've been guilty at times of focusing too much on negative things and contributing to negative things. We've got to make sure that we're using it for the right things. We look at 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 22. Paul tells Timothy here, now flee from youthful lusts and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. But refuse foolish and ignorant speculations, knowing that they produce quarrels. The Lord's bondservant must not be quarrelsome, but be kind to all, skillful in teaching, patient when wrong, with gentleness correcting those who are in opposition. And perhaps God may grant them repentance, leading to the knowledge of the truth. And they may come to their senses and escape from the snare of the devil, having been held captive by him to do his will. Paul is, as he's closing out his letter to Timothy here, maybe the last time he ever talks to Timothy. Again, he's warning him here to stay away from these things. Flee from youthful lust and pursue these things. Pursue righteousness, faith. Refuse foolish and ignorant speculations. Don't be quarrelsome, but be kind, skillful in teaching. And this passage, I think, really reflects on social media a whole lot. And how we talk to people, and how we approach people. And again, how those things can really creep into it. As we look at how technology can impact our lives, again, it can have a great impact. With my job at the school, and I deal with technology all the time. And at one point in time, it shoved down our throat so much that it's like, you got to use this. And then when the internet's out, what do you do next? I can't tell you how many days I got to school and everything was ready to go, and the internet's out, and then I'm back to square one. They can be used for great things, but as Christians, do they bring us away from God? Do we use these things for what they're meant to be used for? Do we use them to help to spread the word of God? Do they help to get more knowledgeable of what we need to, the word of the Lord? Or do we use it for more than negative? Had a student ask me many years ago, he asked about something that was going on in the world, and I said, I haven't heard about that. And he said, are you serious? It's like top news. I said, well, I haven't listened to the news lately. He said, why not? You're a history teacher. You got to know about the news. My response to him was, yeah, but sometimes you got to take a break. Because there's so much negativity out there, I got to take a mental break from the news. I got to just close myself off from that world and get in my own little bubble. Otherwise, I'll lose my ever-living mind. And that's what we got to do as Christians. Sometimes we got to get back into our own little bubble, and our own little bubble is going to be with God, with Jesus. And make sure that that is the focus of our lives. I'm going to close out with this passage this morning. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 20 says, my son, pay attention to my words. Incline your ear to my sayings. They are not to escape from your sight. Keep them in the midst of your heart. For they are life to those who find them, and healing to all their body. Watch over your heart with all diligence. Far from it flow with the springs of life. Rid yourselves of a deceitful mouth, and keep devious speech far from you. Let your eyes look directly ahead, and let your gaze be fixed straight in front of you. Watch the path of your feet, and in all your ways be established. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Turn your foot from evil. And as we sum up the lesson this morning, this really goes perfect. Be careful what we watch. Be careful what we say. Because even though there are some great resources and tools and things with technology that helps our lives, that helps make our lives easier, again, there's a lot of temptation out there to help to bring us away from God. My lesson this morning is for me first and foremost. Make sure that I'm spending the right amount of time that I need to on the right things. Make sure that all the bad things and the negative things I don't let creep into my life. And sometimes I do that a little too much. I spend too much time doing this or doing that. And not enough time on what's important. Times where I could be studying or could be doing some of the kind of research, and instead I'm maybe watching too much of the news. Or maybe playing a game or two. Again, I'm wasting time. Something I got to work on going forward. So as we look at this controversial issue, not just in our society, not just in schools, as Christians, it's the same question and it's the same issue. They're great tools, but are they bringing us away from God? Are they too distracting? Are the distractions of technology leading you away from God to where it's going to impact you to the day of judgment? This morning, if we can help anyone, maybe someone who has been either led astray or again, but maybe haven't spent the right amount of time with God that you need to. Maybe these things here have brought you away from God, or maybe there's something else in your life taking you away from God. Maybe these things right here are not an issue to you whatsoever. Maybe there's something else in your life that's trying to pull you away from God. Maybe it's an emotion, maybe it's a situation that you're going through, maybe it's feelings that you have. But that's why I'm here this morning, not just to hear words about a lesson, but to come back to God if we need that chance. This is what we're here about this morning, is that if we have sin in our lives, we got to get rid of that sin. We got to remove the things that's taking us away from God and make sure that we're focusing on our eternal life in heaven. So this morning, if there's someone here who hasn't been baptized, this is the time to do that right now. Get rid of the distractions of life and make sure that you are following God to the T in the way that He means for you to. And that means coming forward, repenting of your sins, confessing that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, being baptized for the remission of your sins. Because we can't get to heaven without doing that. For those who are Christians, maybe there are things in your life that's brought you away from God. Maybe it's technology, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's work, maybe it's anything else in your life to where you're just going through a difficult time, or maybe you just spend too much time not focusing on God like you need to. I think that we all can be guilty of that, and sometimes. Again, I know I have been. So this morning, if you need to come back to God, or if you need to go to God with prayers to help you get through a certain situation, please come as we stand and as we sing.
Hear the sweet